Hello there, Star Wars fans, and welcome to the Ahmed Best panel at Rebel ScumCon Year 1. Ahmed Best is our feature headliner for Rebel ScumCon, and we are super thrilled to have him out. I cannot wait to ask him all kinds of exciting questions. So, without further ado, Mr. Ahmed Best, the one true Sith Lord, Jar Jar Binks, Kelleran Beq, Ahmed Beq.
What's happening?
Ahmed.
Are we standing for this?
No, we are sitting right here in the middle, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yes, it's actually quite nice. There's only
Happy Saturday, everyone.
So, did you take the bongo here? Did you
Yeah.
go through the planet core?
Yeah, it's a ship, I think.
It's a sub.
Yeah. What's a bongo? I know what a bongo is. What's a bongo? It's a ship, I think. Remember, that's what they said. The Jedis, remember?
I can't believe I fell for that.
See?
Man, I'm
This
so
guy.
fired.
Yeah, this guy. How you doing, Bobby? How's things? You good?
Oh, things are good.
Are you warm in this all-white situation?
Actually, it's not as bad as you might think.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was definitely warmer in the gray suit. But
Yeah.
how about you?
You're
Are you
just
having
like
a good time so
a
far?
heavenly Michael Jackson. You need like a fedora.
Something like that.
Epaulets.
Something like I have been working on my moonwalk.
Now we're going to have to see it.
Okay. Goodness, put me on a
On carpet.
It's not great. It's not great. And I'm in boots. There's a texture.
In
here.
boots.
There's texture.
All right,
Okay,
let's go.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, not the greatest, like I said, but. So,
Nice.
how was your travel?
It was good. It was really good. I flew here on American Airlines. I'm not being paid to say that. But yeah, it was quite nice. It's been a minute since I've been in Dallas.
When was the last time you were out in Dallas?
The last time I was in Dallas was probably about 10-ish years ago. I was here doing some television thing that I can't remember because I'm older now. But
Why
yeah,
are you-
it was. I always loved Dallas. I was in Austin actually not too long ago for South by Southwest.edu with a whole bunch of my colleagues at Stanford. So it was wonderful being in. I always have a good time when I'm here in Texas.
Well, thank you so much for coming back. We are very thrilled and honored to have you with us today.
Yeah.
So I want to start with the origin story of Ahmed Best in Star Wars. So when did Ahmed Best first fall in love and become a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, it was 77. A New Hope was the first movie I ever saw in the theater. And it was, my father is a cinematographer. And, I always joke that we were the only family in the South Bronx with, on the coffee table, American cinematographer and Fellini on Fellini. So I was really big into movies when I was a kid through my father. And, so going to see movies was a big deal, even though we didn't have very much. Like, we always made time to, and found a way to get there. So I think I was about 4-ish years old when I first saw A New Hope, and, took the whole family into the city, which was Manhattan. If you're from New York and you're from the outer boroughs, I'm from the South Bronx, Manhattan is the city. Everybody calls Manhattan the city. So we all went into the city to see A New Hope, and I remember being late because my father was always late to movies, and it used to drive me crazy, which is why I'm never late now. I'm 10 minutes early and I'll sit through the previews. Drives my wife crazy. But I remember sitting right in the front because those were the only seats there because we were late, and it was packed, the theater. And then, a long time ago in the galaxy far away, I was like, what's about to happen? And then, spow! I was hooked from like that first minute. I was hooked. And then everything in the world became Star Wars, everything.
So, in the meantime, having a father in the industry, how did we get to Jar Jar in The Phantom Menace?
Yeah, so I told the story yesterday, but I was doing a show called Stomp, which is a found object percussion and communication show. So I did that show in New York for about a year, and then I went on the Stomp tour. And on the Stomp tour, right before we got to San Francisco, we did this thing called Split Weeks, which Split Weeks was like 2 cities a week. And it was one of those times where it's just like, I had no idea what city. You would wake up in a new city and be like, where am I? You know? And we were having a really, really grueling time doing Stomp in these Split Weeks. And we finally get to San Francisco where we get to have some time. So we're in San Francisco for like a month, which was great. And so we were playing the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco. And I was ready to just like do a show without having to worry about getting on the bus the next night. And you know, the cast that I was with, we were all just really excited about being in a place where we could actually sit down for a minute. Because, you know, a cast doing that in Split Weeks, it's like, you know, going to Desert Storm. We all had like trauma and, you know, it was just really, really hard. But you really do solidify as a group of people going through this hardship, you know, just like any team or any group of people going through hard times. So we finally got to San Francisco. It was chill. I was really excited. And then one of my castmates gets violently ill and has to go back home to North Carolina. And so somebody from New York flew out to San Francisco, right? Now, I was the lead of the show. But this guy who came out was just like, he was from San Francisco, and he had a lot of friends there, and he had tenure over me. So he was like, I think I'm going to lead the show. And I was like, wait, we just did Split Weeks. Like, we're a cast, we're solidified, we finally get to sit down. Like, I was really excited. And he was just like, nope, I'm leading the show, and you have to play this other role. And I hadn't played that other role in like 8 months, right? So I was, needless to say, I was not very happy about this. And I was very young and very cocky, and decided that I was going to be a complete and utter asshole on stage. And my whole goal was to make sure that no one ever looked at this guy, right? I'm gonna take all the attention, like from everybody. So there's this part in Stomp where we do like a hands and feet kind of thing. It's like body percussion, right? And each of us have a 4-bar solo. And he was like, oh, can we see everybody's solo? And everybody did the solo. And he was like, Ahmed, do you have a solo? And I was like, nah, I don't know. I'll make it up as soon as I get out there. And he was like, are you gonna, and I was like, yeah, I'll make it up. Just total asshole move. And then I'm a drummer, right? So I've been playing drums since I was a kid. And I'm pretty good, right? He was not as good a drummer as me. So like the faster we got, the less he was able to hang. So everything was just like, it was like EDM. We were just so fast. Like I played everything so fast. And there was one time where I like doing one-handed shit, like really fast and just looking at him, just like, come on, what you got? Can't do this, can you? Nope. So the piece de resistance of this show. So I'm doing the show, I'm acting it, I'm getting all the attention, and I had some like groupies in the audience. Like there were these girls in the audience who was like looking at me and they're like, oh my God. Every time I came out, they're like, oh, he's so funny, oh my God, right? And I was just like, don't play these groupies. So we doing this thing called encore at the end. We were just kind of standing, and the lead of the show is supposed to be like leading the audience, and I'm standing right at the front of the stage, just like, you're not gonna look at them. And then the groupies are like, right? And so I took my shirt off. I can't believe I did this. I took my shirt off, and I threw it into the audience like I was Bobby Brown, right? I was like, ha! And they got up and like was like fighting for my shirt. They were like, oh my God, oh. And I was just like, yeah, that's right. Don't ever take my role again, right? But then at the end of that show, I immediately felt terrible because I didn't just pull the focus from him, I took the whole show. That was like, everybody on stage, and I felt really bad. I was like, oh, okay, so I go into the locker room, or the dressing room, and I'm just like feeling shitty. My castmate, RJ Sampson, comes into the dressing room, and he was like, yo, Ahmed, and I was like, RJ, man, don't talk to me, man. I know what I did. I'm really upset. I'm sorry, but don't talk to me. I'm mad, right? And he was like, no, I brought somebody to see the show. And I was like, oh, man, I just did that show, and it was like somebody in his family or something. I was just like, oh, shit. And I was like, oh, man, really? And he was like, yeah, the casting director for Star Wars. And I was like, then I really felt bad because I thought I messed it up for RJ. So what happened was the cast of Stomp did a private show for Lucasfilm. And I wasn't at that show, but RJ was. And RJ, George Lucas, for those who didn't know, liked RJ. And RJ auditioned for Jar Jar before I did. So RJ kept in touch with the casting director, Robin Gerlin, invited her to that show. And I completely took it over, right? And so I was like, oh man, RJ, I am so sorry. Like I just completely destroyed your chance. And he was like, no, not at all. She wants to talk to you. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't get it. She's like, she wants to talk to you after that show. And I was like, really? After I did that, she wants to talk to me? She was like, yeah, go back to the crib and she's gonna call you, right? This was before cell phones for all of you young people here. We used to have to go to a place and sit down and wait for this thing we called a telephone to ring. There was buttons on it, it had a handle. If you had a grandmother, it was like a rotary. You had to like wait 30 years for the thing to come back. It was like ding, ta 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 ta. So I go back to the crib, and she calls me. I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello. And she goes, hi, this is Robin. I want you to come up to the ranch. Like she just throws it out there like it's nothing, right? Come up to the ranch. And the next day, I was at Skywalker Ranch auditioning for Jar Jar.
Wow.
Well, that's how it all started.
That's pretty magical.
Yeah, that's not even the crazy part.
Well, what's the crazy part?
The callback. So, I do the first audition in Robin's office, which was in the basement of the main house of Skywalker. And there's a whole Skywalker Ranch thing that is ridiculous. Like when you drive up to Skywalker Ranch, I never get over this. They have a fire brigade, their own, right? They have their own like fire engines and fire people, and they fight fires. For real, you know? They help like neighborhoods fighting fires. And so when you drive into Skywalker, the first person that you meet is one of these firemen, right? And I drive in and it's like, hello, Mr. Best. And the thing that, it was just almost like, my eye went right to the fireman patch, which was like, you know, Skywalker Ranch Fire. And their insignia is an X-Wing fighter. And I was really like, cool. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I will be having one of those patches. I'm not leaving without one. And I was like, hey man, where do you get those patches? And he was like, oh, you have to be part of the fire brigade in order to get this one. And I was like, oh, I'm getting that patch. I'm getting one.
Did you get it?
Oh, yeah.
Now, did you get it the same day, or did this come later?
Yeah, I got it later. Nah, I stole that joint from that day. I was like, I'm getting one. There's no way I'm walking, because I didn't know if I was ever going to be back. I was like, there's no way I'm walking out of here without that X-Wing fighter on my arm.
So can you take me through that for a moment? Did you creep up on some unsuspecting...
I can't tell you how I did it.
And then just... rip it
uncorroborated. This is being recorded.
That is true. Well, I mean, it's like 25 years ago. Isn't it like a cold case?
Yeah, the statute of limitations of stealing an X-Wing patch are probably over.
Right. I'm sure they'll let it slide. I mean, they would have sent the stormtroopers after you already. If
yeah, but you saw what happened to them, so I would have been fine.
That is true. That is true.
But the crazy bit was like my screen test, if you can call it that, because there really were no screens. So I do the audition, then I go away, I go back on the road with Stomp, and I'm in DC, I get a call, and they were like, we want you to come back to ILM. And again, I was just like, you guys just say these things, like ILM is crazy, right? So I fly to ILM, which at the time wasn't where it is now. Like ILM was in Marin County, and it looked like a fake town. Like you can drive through it, and you were just like, oh, this is a weird Northern California town, and I've never seen chick a sandwich. Like but it was all of these like fake like restaurants and storefronts just to make it look like a town so nobody knew ILM was there. So you can just drive through and it just looked like a regular town. I was driving around this thing for like 3 hours, like, where's ILM? I'm expecting to see like ILM, you know, Industrial Lights and Magic and, all the logos and stuff, but it was hidden. I finally find it. I get to ILM and I walk in and the first things I see are the Energizer Bunny, dead up, and Han Solo frozen in carbonite. Those are the two first things I see at ILM. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm a skinny kid from the South Bronx of New York City. And I'm looking at Han Solo frozen in carbonite, like from my favorite movie of all time. So I'm freaking out, and I'm trying to keep it level. You know, I'm trying to be like, all right, I'm cool. I do this every day. Everybody sees Han Solo frozen in carbonite. I'm fine, right? So I go in, meet all the friendly folks at ILM. Rob Coleman, who runs ILM right now, is there. He was head of animation for Phantom Menace. And they take me into a room and they say, put this on. And it's a complete skin-tight, Lycra, full, you could see everything bodysuit. Put it on. With like ping pong balls on it. And they had these like 6-inch platform heels and they say, put these on. And a headband. I looked like I was about to do some flash dancing. Right? So I'm putting this on. It's very revealing. I'm a little bit embarrassed. And I'm trying to keep it cool. And they go, okay, yeah, wait for George, and then we can get started. And I was like, George who? George what? George Washington? George Washington Carver? Who's coming? And then George Lucas walks in. This is the first time I meet George. And I'm like, George, hi, how are you? And he's like, I said, I'm really excited to be here. And he goes, I could see that. And then he goes, come with me, we're gonna start this thing, right? So we're in this like garage. And on tripods all around the room are these infrared cameras, right? And everybody's kind of explaining to me what it is. And George is kind of like being George. You know, he's like, okay, I'm just, and I'll put you, and he starts talking to the guys. And I'm like, could somebody tell me what this is? Like, could somebody tell me what I look like? How am I supposed to move? And then one of the animators was just like this. He was like, okay. He pulls out a pen and a piece of paper. He's like, all right, you're gonna kind of look like this. And he starts drawing, right? And he drew like the Jar Jar ears in the face. But before he could finish it, George comes back and he's like, okay, and he puts it away, right? And I'm just like, I was getting a little something. And so George is like, can you walk a little bit? And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, no, I want it to be like a little looser, a little more loping. And I was like, okay. And I did that. And he was like, boom. I was walking. And he was like, okay, cool. Now you can do whatever you want. And I was like, yes, I'm going to do whatever I want, right? So I started doing like backflips. I was doing, there's a martial art called capoeira, which I was doing a lot of at that time. It's a Brazilian martial art. So I was doing this. I was doing capoeira, right? Because at the time, they didn't know whether Jar Jar was going to be walking or where he was going to be like, kind of like a salamander, like crawling, like quadruped. So I did both, and capoeira is very low to the ground, right? So I would do like some capoeira moves, and then I would Jenga, and I would do like a couple backflips, which was hard to do in them 6-inch heels. So everyone who wears 6-inch heels, and I'm not going to be gender specific, but you have all the respect in the world from me. Because I did a couple backflips in them joints, and I'll never be the same. So I did that, and then George goes, okay, thanks, and then leaves. And I was like, was it good? Was it, what did I was doing it? And Rob Coleman goes, oh man, that was great. And he goes, come here, right? And so I go behind the computers, and at that time, like monitors were like 12 feet thick, remember them days? Where we had like, you needed like 3 friends to carry a computer monitor? It's now, and they didn't have the same power as your iPhone does right now. So I walk behind the monitors and I see what is called now a point cloud, right? And it was like all of the targets that were on the suit that I was wearing. Mm-hmm. And it moved like me. It looked like, even though it was just like dots on the screen, I was like, that's me. Wow. And then Rob is like, we're going to be able to do this. At the time, before my screen test, they had no idea whether this thing was going to work, right? So they were just like, okay, we saw you and you can do that. Now this is gonna work, right? And I was like, cool. Then I went back out on tour, and then 2 weeks later, power off. I'm in Philadelphia doing Stomp, and I get a phone call and say, we want you to come to England and do this movie. And I was like, what? I still didn't know what the character was. Nobody told me anything. I didn't get a script until the table read, our first table read around the table.
And when was that?
That was the summer of '97. And I started, my first audition was like summer '96. Wow. So the summer of '97 is when I first saw a script. And I saw it when we all saw it. Like Liam showed up. I never met anybody. Liam and Ewan and Natalie and Jake, and everybody had more experience than me. I was the only person who had never done it. I was right off the stage. So, even Lil Jake did Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And like,
Yes, he did.
everybody had more experience than me. So it was really quite intimidating. But that was when I finally was like, oh, that's what I'm doing in this thing.
So, after Phantom Menace, you played another character. How did Ahmed Beq come about?
That was all Anthony Daniels' fault. So it was my day off, right? And on my day off, like I was on set all the time because I was just like, when is the next time you're gonna ever like be behind George Lucas and be able to like learn from him? So I was on set every day and I was just sitting behind George Lucas. And at first I thought I was annoying him, because I was just trying to be quiet. In Phantom, I was just like, But then like he would do a scene and then he'd go like this. The reason why I did that was because, and he would like start teaching me, And I was like, oh, wow, this is gonna work out, right? So I would show up every day and more, he would just share more and more with me every single day. So I did that through all the movies, right? And Clones, we were in Australia, and it was my day off. I was there kind of listening to George and watching him do the thing. I had already kind of got his process, but Clones was the first movie shot digital ever. First major motion picture. So I wanted to learn what digital filmmaking was going to be, and I learned it on the first major motion picture shot digital. And I remember when they wheeled out like the plasma screens, and it was probably like 720i. You know what I'm saying? Like now your iPhone is like 4K, These screens were like 60 by 60, and it was just like 720. And we were looking at it like, oh my God, it's the future, But I was chilling on my day off, and Anthony Daniels comes in, he's like, come on, we're gonna be in the movie. And I was like, what are you talking about, right? And then he hands me this uniform, and he goes, put this on. And I was like, why is everybody telling me to put something on? Every time I'm showing up at this place, put this on. So it was these like, pilots' uniforms. And then Anthony was like, all right, I'm gonna put it on, and we're gonna be pilots in the bar scene. And then I started getting into it, right? Because he got excited. And so I was just like, oh, this is gonna be cool. So I asked the makeup artist to put this giant like blaster scar over my eye. And they were just like, okay, because they weren't really doing stuff like that, They were doing like very intricate things with like Natalie's hair and, but and they were painting people from head to toe. So they were just like, oh. So I got this giant scar on my eye. And then me and Anthony ended up in the bar scene. And at first I was just like chilling in the bar scene. And then George looks at us and he goes, okay. And like sees what's going on and he gives us both close-ups. He was like, I'm gonna give you a close-up. And I'm standing next to a very beautiful half-naked New Zealand woman painted orange. And then Katie Lucas, George's daughter, who's in the purple.
So Avita was the other Twilight that was there.
Yeah, she was wonderful. She was fantastic.
So what was it like being in a cantina scene, not in the original trilogy, with a bunch of other alien characters around? Did it feel like, oh wow, this is like the cantina scene in A New Hope, or did it feel completely different to you?
I loved it. And the cantina scene in A New Hope and that bar scene in Clones, the thing that I find so very interesting about that and in Star Wars is when people look at that scene, they go, wow, look at all the different creatures in this one place. And they're all doing the same thing, like having a drink, right? If we really kind of unpack that, that's America, right? That's what we look like when we're walking down the street, right? In Star Wars, no one has a problem with it. Yeah? Everybody wants it. We want to see what a Twi'lek is, right? We want to see who's the dude with the scar. We want to see all of these different creatures in these different places. But for some reason, when we're outside of Star Wars, nobody wants to do that. We want to fight about who's different. We want to call people a thing and put them in a different place, right? One of the reasons why I love sci-fi is because of all the creatures in the one room, right? It's because we can learn about these. I mean, we all find the most obscure Star Wars character and put their skin on. We cosplay as them to be different, right? To understand them, right? We learn about where they're from. We learn about who their family is, and we love that, right? Let's bring that here. Let's take that out of Star Wars and put it in our regular everyday lives. Think about how beautiful our universe is, how beautiful our galaxies would be, you know? So those scenes really move me because that's what I want to see every day. I want to be in that cantina in Mos Eisley. I want to learn every day. You know?
Simply incredible, and thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So you took a little bit of a break in between Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars, like everybody else. There was another little bit of a gap. It was a bit more of a brief gap this time. But when did you find out that you were going to be playing Jar Jar again for the Clone Wars?
Yeah, that was well, I have to say, like, I was asked to be in the Clone Wars, and I said no. First off, and someone else, a really good friend of mine who's a very, very good voice actor, played Jar Jar, right? And apparently the fandom got really upset. And I was like, wow, this is new? You're mad that I'm not in it?
I am one of those people.
Well, I was like, wow, this is interesting. So Lucasfilm calls me and they go, can you please come back and play Jar Jar in the Clone Wars? And I was just like, honestly, I don't know. You know, I mean, it's been quite traumatic, you know? And then, this was years ago, but then I met Dave Filoni, who was right then just a new upstart out of animation, you know, trying to follow George around. I'm like, that's my job. And I met Filoni, and I was like, I like this guy. He's like super cool, and he's one of us, you know? He's not just a fan, but he's deep in it. He's in the lore, you know? And after talking with Filoni, I was like, yeah, all right, I'll come back and do Jar Jar. And Clone Wars was its own thing, you know? It was just, Jar Jar in Clone Wars is very different from the Jar Jar we knew in Phantom Menace. He's a lot older, he's a lot, you know, we figured out the senator, what he was like being Senator Binks, as well as like the warrior, you know, Jar Jar, like now that he's a general in the Gungan world. So, and, you know, I had a bunch of opportunities to play with, like, this buddy cop duo with Mace Windu, which was really fun. And then, you know, I got a girlfriend, which I never got in the movies, which I wish I did. So it was really nice. But for me, it's always been about people. And if the people were good people, I'm always down to play.
That's awesome. And it's perfect you brought up the buddy cop thing with Mace Windu, because that was actually my next question.
Yeah.
So going back to upstaging leading up to Star Wars, what was it like to upstage a character like Mace Windu as Jar Jar Binks, where you're on an alien planet and everybody's like, who's this guy?
It's not hard to upstage people as Jar Jar Binks because he's very hard to miss. Yeah, you see things falling down. That's Jar Jar, and you know all the Jedi's have to be stoic and serious. But I'll tell you, so T.C. Carson plays Mace Windu in those Clone Wars episodes, and recording those episodes with him in the room was just hysterical. I tend to have a knack of like really just breaking Jedi character. And there was a bunch of stuff that we did in those Clone War episodes where TC just could not keep a straight face. And I was like, yes, still got it. So it was really fun. It was just really, really fun.
That's so great. Well, now you're not just a security officer on Coruscant or the bomb bad general from the Naboo, but you are also a Jedi Master now.
Yeah, I grew up.
But that didn't start in a recent Disney Plus series that we've seen that started a little bit further back. So how was Kelleran Beq born for Jedi Temple Challenge?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be a game show host. I grew up watching a lot of game shows. My grandmother was a huge game show person, and she would like yell at the screen, you know? She would like yell at the screen for like game shows and bowling. She was like huge into TV, PBA bowling. And so people would be like, they would miss something, and my grandmother would be like, oh my God, oh, could have won so much money. So I just loved making my grandmother laugh. Like, she had a great laugh, and she used to always laugh at these game shows. So I was like, I want to be a game show host just to make my grandma laugh, you know? And so when Jedi Temple Challenge came around, I was like, bet. I know this game show, Jedis, I'm down, right? So the guys who came up with Jedi Temple Challenge, they were just like, you can carte blanche to make this Jedi whoever you want to make him.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you ain't said nothing but a word, bruv. I went in, right? So, you know, thing about being a Star Wars fan is, you know, and I'm a fan first before anything. It's just you really get deep into stories. You can really get deep into the lore, right? And, you know, I do this professionally. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director. I went to film school and got my master's degree and all of that academic BS and futurist and everything. So I was like, I'm going to make sure that this character is as deep story-wise as every character in Star Wars, you know? And I fortunately have had the opportunity to learn from George Lucas, right? And George goes deep. You know, he doesn't say very much, but he knows everybody. He knows everything. And he's very detailed and very specific. Like, the reason why these characters do what they do is because he said that they do, right? And he's very good at tailoring a character to his idea, even if you come up with it. Like, a lot of the Jar Jar stuff I came up with, and he was like, yes, do that, yes, do that, no, do that, right? And he doesn't talk very much, but when you see him, like, tailoring the character, you're just like, I get it. And then it gives you a little bit more creatively to go on, right? So I was like, with Kelleran, I'm gonna do that. So they were like, well, what's his name? Well, from the Cantina scene in Clones, I brought in the Beq, right? I wanted to tie the Cantina character and this Jedi character together.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they were related.
Right. Yes, Ahmed Beq, Kelleran Beq, right? So I was like, I want to tie in those because there's a story there, which hopefully I'll be able to tell one of these days, right? So I brought in the Beq. Now, I've been a really big fan of like name derivations and etymologies and, you know, where things come from. My name, Ahmed, means worthy of praise in Arabic. I've always loved the idea that these people came up with these names that mean things, right? Willem, Wilhelm ends up William, right? So I wanted to find a way to tie in the sequels and the prequels.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So the name that kept coming out to me was Kylo Ren. And I love this idea of Kylo Ren being this character that Han and Leia birthed and then named him Kylo Ren. So I was like, what would be a good derivation of Kylo Ren? Kelleran. So Kelleran is the parent name to Kylo Ren. Over the time, Kelleran, like Wilhelm, turns into William. Kelleran turns into Kylo Ren. So I wanted to put those together to kind of bridge the gap between the prequels, the sequels, and now, right? So Kelleran Beq is how I came up with the name.
So, going from Jedi Temple Challenge, did they approach you about bringing the character back for The Mandalorian? Or did they say, hey, we have like a role for you, super, super secret?
Yeah, so I get a call from Filoni, and he's like, come and have lunch with me and Jon Favreau. And I was like, why? And they were just like, just come and have lunch. You know, we'll shoot the shit, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, this has something to do with The Mandalorian. So I go to their office, which is very nice, and we sit down and we have lunch. And I've only met Jon Favreau in passing, you know. One of my good friends is Seth MacFarlane, and Jon Favreau directed The Orville, the first couple of episodes of The Orville with Seth MacFarlane. And one of my best friends is on that show. My friend Jay Lee plays John Lamar in The Orville. And so, you know, while Favreau was doing The Orville, I would go watch stuff at Seth MacFarlane's house of like the Orville stuff, them figuring stuff out at Seth MacFarlane's house, and Favreau would be there. And I met Favreau kind of like, you know, friendly. I never really sat down and talked to him. So I have lunch with Favreau and Filoni, and we're just talking, you know, film stuff. They're talking Star Wars stuff. We're trading stories like you and I are doing right now. And then they go, okay, we have an idea. We want you to come in and do some stuff in The Mandalorian. And I was like, here it comes, right? And I was just like, they're gonna ask me to do Jar Jar again. And I was like, I don't know if I wanna do that, right? It's a whole new group of people, whole new set of fans. And without George, honestly, it's tough, you know? And so they were like, no, we have another thing, you know? We want you to be a Jedi. And I was like, oh, okay. And then John, I have to say, I was still a little bit trepidatious because Star Wars has a tendency to take over, you know? Like, there are so many things that I've done and so many things that I want to do. Like, I don't want to just be in this one thing, right? So as an artist, it's challenging when you're in Star Wars because it takes over your life. You know, everything is like, oh, you Star Wars, like, and nobody knows a lot of the other little things that I've done, you know? So, and they're important as well to who I am as an individual and as an artist. So I was just like, I don't know if I want to do Mandalorian, right? And John and Dave were just like, we are going to make sure that you're protected. We're going to make sure that you're going to be safe. And I was like, bet, all right. And like I said, for me, it's about the people. It's not necessarily about the project or the thing. You know, I've never done anything for that, you know. And much to my wife's chagrin, I never do things for the money. She hates me for that, but I'm just like, money's gonna come. And she's like, pay these damn bills. So I was like, okay, all right. I'll do it. I'll do The Mandalorian. And they were wonderful. Both Favreau, Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and then I go in and Carl Weathers is directing my episode. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Apollo Creed. It's Apollo Creed. I go in to do the costume stuff, right? And Carl comes out and I'm like, don't say Apollo Creed. Don't say Apollo Creed. Don't say Apollo Creed. And, you know, Carl was a very formidable human being. Like, he's big, you know? And it was just wonderful. And so I said yes, and I was just like, I got to do the fights. You know, I'm going to do all the fights. I'm a martial artist. I grew up a martial artist all my life. So I'm doing the fights. And so I'm getting fitted. I'm in the dressing room. And they're just like, okay, you're going to go to fight training now. And I'm like, bet. I'm in. Let's go. Let's do this. And they were like, okay, so you're going to meet up with Lateef. And I was like, wait a minute. Lateef Crowder? I've known Lateef for like 20 years. Lateef and I go way back in like martial arts community, right? I had no idea he was the Mandalorian, right? So I'm just like, Lateef, get out of here. I show up and Lateef doesn't know it's me. I show up to the stunt and I'm stretching and stuff and I see Teef. Teef comes in, you know, Teef is kind of big man on campus, right? I see Lateef and he goes, ugh. And I know he's thinking in his head like, it's gonna be so much work training this cat, right? For those of you who are not black people have a thing when we see each other, and I'm gonna show you it right now, when you know each other, right? I turn around, Lateef sees me, and he's like, bruh, bruh. And me and Lateef, I hugged this man, and I was like, my brother, we did it, we're here. We made it, you know? And he and I just work on this fight, which eventually becomes the Kelleran duel with the clones.
So when did you find out it was Kelleran? Did they tell you ahead of time that you were going to be playing Kelleran, or did they just say you're playing some Jedi and then later it became Kelleran?
No, we all did it together. We decided it. I mean, the Kelleran Beq, I made that character so deep for that reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you see me, you're gonna go, wait, Jedi Temple Challenge, who is he? And then you can go back and find out who he is. Because I had done all of that work already, right? So it was kind of undeniable. It was undeniable that was gonna be Kelleran Beq. And that's, you know, when actors talk about doing the actor homework and filmmakers talk about doing backstories and histories and stuff, and everybody rolls their eyes, there's a reason for it. And the reason is because it's going to get bigger, yeah? If you actually do that work, it can move you to make decisions in the moment that will reflect and be honest to what you've already created. So I created Kelleran that deep for that reason. So it was really, really undeniable. And then they gave me the dopest Jedi robes ever, right? And that was really, all of those robes were inspired by two things. Ndinkra symbols in Ghana. So they're African Ndinkra symbols in Ghana that they're spiritual symbols from a religion called Yoruba. And they mean things, right? There's infinity. So it's a combination of Ndinkra symbols and my tattoos. I'm very heavily tattooed under all this wonderfulness. And most of my tattoos are Polynesian. And my tattoo artist, my brother Jesse, Jaswan Abresi, who is also my first Eskrima teacher. He did all my tattoos, and there are a couple poems that he translated into Polynesian art, and they're all over me. So both of those things ended up being on my robes.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the fan theories over the years, along with all the other stuff, and now it's finally happening.
Dun, dun, dun.
So later this year, we have a special Lego movie coming out where we're gonna finally get Darth Jar Jar.
Yeah, yeah.
So was this something that you wanted as well, or did you think the whole Sith Jar Jar thing was kind of silly?
I quite liked the Sith Jar Jar thing, not because I'm really into like the Sith in any other way other than loving the characters just like everybody else does, but there were things that I did as Jar Jar that this guy caught that a lot of people didn't catch, you know, and there was a lot of just mirroring the Jedis. So every time the Jedis would do a thing, and when you can rewatch The Phantom Menace, you'll see me doing these things. Like, they'll do something, and I'll be like, what is this thing that they're doing? Like, does this work for everybody, or is this just a Jedi thing, right? And I kind of got that from Ghostbusters. Remember Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters when he gets possessed by the Keymaster?
Might ring a bell.
Right? So there's a moment where he's like the Keymaster, and they're having an argument, the Ghostbusters have an argument, and he's pointing, and Rick Moranis is standing behind them going like this, like some really brilliant stuff as an actor, and I always loved that. So I brought that into Jar Jar. Like every time the Jedis are doing stuff, I'm doing stuff, right? But also, Jar Jar is a combination of Buster Keaton and Jackie Chan. And because physically, those were my pinnacles for physical comedy, you know? Like Buster Keaton would do something and just no expression and just be like, what was that? And that final battle scene in Phantom Menace is like a Buster Keaton movie. So it's like completely a Buster Keaton movie. Like, especially like running away from the boomers, right? So the boomers are running down the hill and I'm running. And I'm like looking back at them like they're still coming, you know? That's totally Buster Keaton. Yeah, because Buster Keaton would run from things and then just be like, this thing is chasing me. And he'd keep looking back at it like it's gonna stop somehow, you know? But the other thing that I stole from Jackie Chan was drunken style kung fu, right? So Shaolin drunken style, I was a huge fan of Drunken Master 2, Jackie Chan. And I would just mimic all of those moves and mimic all of those movies. So all of like the stumbling stuff, that's all drunken kung fu. And I ripped it off from Jackie Chan. Just completely ripped it off. So this guy saw that, right? And he was just like, there's no way someone unskilled could do that. And he's right, I'm not unskilled. I know exactly what I'm doing. So he was just like, that there has to be Sith Lord. And I was just like, makes sense to me. I mean, you know, but he saw that, which was, I was just like, I'm glad somebody saw the work, because it was kind of hard selling it to people. I was like, no, I'm actually doing a lot of shit.
So, does it feel surreal 25 years after The Phantom Menace has come out? I mean, how does that feel to someone who's been in the industry for so long?
Damn, I'm not that old, bruv.
That's not how I meant it, but...
For someone geriatric about to go into a home, how does it feel?
Can we get the orderlies?
Old. Feels old.
Someone have his applesauce. Where's the applesauce handler?
To be honest, I'm not that surprised, because George told me, like, one of the reasons why I started looking into being a futurist, becoming a futurist, and then eventually teaching about the future at Stanford was because of George Lucas. George Lucas is very much a futurist. Even to this day, like I saw him a couple weeks ago and he was telling me what's gonna happen. And every time he talks about it, I'm just like, it's gonna happen. Like I remember I was driving, I used to drive, this is how much of a like student I am of this guy. Eventually, I got so ubiquitously annoying that he was just like, drive to work with me. So his car would like pick me up and we would drive on to set together, where he would like give me all of these nuggets, right? So this was right at the beginning of like reality TV, right? And everybody's just like, oh, this is just a flash in the pan. It's just not gonna happen anymore. And George was like, no, it's gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be everywhere. And it's you can't stop it. It's gonna be this big thing, right? And he was right. So 25 years ago, when Phantom came out, he was like, in 25 years, they're gonna be talking about this completely different. Said this to me on the phone. I had my Motorola StarTAC at the time. He called me on my Motorola StarTAC. I was like, flick, click, huh, what? But he was like, 25 years later, he's like, 25 years, nobody's gonna be talking about Jar Jar the way they're talking about him now. He's like, all of those kids that love him are gonna grow up and you're gonna see these movies again. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna believe you now. You know, at the time I was 26, you know, but now that it's where it is, I'm just like, it's exactly what he said, he thought. So I've always had his voice in the back of my head, you know, all of these years going, okay, 20 years, it's gonna be different. And he was right. He was right. You should hear what he says about AI.
What does he say about
I'm
AI?
not telling you that. I get the gems, bro. I'll put it out there in popular media and make it look like I said it.
Oh, well, then there you go. Okay, real quick, do we have any questions for the audience? Any? Yes, right there in the front.
I'm playing Darth Jar Jar in Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy on Disney Plus in September. And the coolest thing is I get the Dark Falcon. Like, everybody else is excited about Jar Jar. I'm excited about the Dark Falcon. As somebody who wanted to be Han Solo when I was a kid in the Millennium Falcon, I got the Dark Falcon now, and I'm super happy about it. So yes.
Wait, like, the Dark Falcon belongs to Darth Jar Jar.
That's right.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's my whip now, bro.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to pick up that Lego set really soon.
I'm being that mug like Snoop Dogg.
I was at first thinking, man, how am I gonna get a hold of the Darth Jar Jar minifig? Because I wasn't sure if I wanted the whole set, but
Comes with the Dark Falcon, bro.
Nah, it's like, if it's his, kind of have to have it,
Yeah.
right? Well, who else is picking up the Dark Falcon? Yeah.
Dark Falcon, baby.
Yep, Yep, I knew it. All right, who's got another question for us? Yes.
Do you do the voice of Jar Jar? And
Yes.
do a little bit of
I usually don't do this without a couple zeros after it. But just for you, I don't know. What would you like me to say? You might say you boom at the gasser, then crashing the boss's hey blibber, then vanished. I still don't know what that means. To this day, still have no idea.
You crashed a sub into his house.
Nope, that's not it.
No?
No,
That's always what I understood it as.
no. I that was my suggestion too.
Yeah?
I was like, George, what is it? He was like, I don't know.
I always took
Like,
it as he crashed it
did
into
I
his
crash
house.
the hay blibber into
Yeah.
his? He was like, no.
Oh.
Like, so what is it? No.
That's what I always took it as, especially
It's just some
rewatching.
shit to say to confuse Jedis.
It worked. It certainly worked. I mean, it confused all of us, I guess. But rewatching The Phantom Menace most recently in theaters, it finally clicked. Well, not finally clicked for me, but it just further reinforced the sternness on my position of Jar Jar not being a complete moron like Qui-Gon suggested in The Phantom Menace. Because everything Jar Jar says is rooted in common sense. No, why are we going this way? There's bad things this way.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a secret place, but, well, actually, I can't tell you about it. I shouldn't have even mentioned it. No,
Yeah.
take us there. Well, if I do, I'm going to get in trouble. No, take us there anyway. And then what happened? You got in trouble. Everything Jar Jar says in The Phantom Menace makes complete sense. I honestly don't understand.
It's just like my real life.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Yes. Would you like? Who do you want to pick?
So many.
You pick.
Right there. Them braids. Look at them beautiful braids. Go ahead, girl, with your braids. Looks so pretty. The voice came from. So I have a lot of cousins. Yeah, my uncles were fruitful and multiplied. I have like 50 first cousins.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't ask me. They don't get Netflix. I guess I'm not sure why there's so many of them. So that voice was the voice I used to use with my little cousins. You know, when I would play with them, I'd just be like, "Come over here," and they'd be like, "Ha." And so when at first I wasn't cast to do Jar Jar's voice. I was just gonna be the body. And I told Robin Gerlin, I was like, I do voices too, right? And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And so I put like 7 voices on a tape back then. Tapes were these things that we had in the olden days. When you put things on, it was magnetic, and then you put it in this thing called a tape player, pressed it. That one, the one that became Jar Jar, was the one George liked. He just picked that one. He was like, do that one. And I was like, bet. That's where I came up with the voice.
Another
So
question.
pretty.
Well, first of all, recognize you for what you've done for the fandom for so many years. I know that you went through some dark days after the prequels. Share with us a little bit. The word resiliency carries a lot of weight, and I think you represented really, really well for all of us. Right? So you're a life lesson for all of us that could perhaps have those dark days here and there. What kept you going during those days? And now, how do you feel about getting back into the fray and giving us this Kelleran Beq and the Mandalorian and you are again on top of the game? What kept you afloat, and how do you feel now that you are back to the game?
Yeah, what kept me afloat was it was very tough because at the time there was no such thing as cyberbullying, right? There was no, now there's an entire psychological profession. Like you can go to get a PhD in psychology based on that, just based on internet hate, based on cyberbullying, based on all that. That didn't exist in 1999. And Jar Jar was probably the first case of that, you know, because there was no social media, right? People had to they put up websites. And now at that time, there was like HTML5 and JavaScript, maybe, right? You had to wear a white lab coat in order to build a website. So to build a website, you had to really give a shit. Like, you had to really care. It wasn't like, I got 140 characters to hate this dude. No, it was like, no, I got to program hate. And people really took the time to do that. Like I said, I'm a kid from the South Bronx, you know. Being in Star Wars was never a plan. Now you can actually have a career in Star Wars. But at the time, it was like, does George feel like doing a movie? Okay, let's everybody go, you know. And I beat out Michael Jackson to do this thing. So I was so proud of the work, and the hardest part was not being able to continue the work. And that's what was tough. You know, it's hard to feel like at 26 your whole career is over, you know? So the thing that kept me going, one was thinking about what my family could be and was. But it was also, I have more to do, you know? I have a lot of work to do. And 26 is very young. And I need my voice, not George's voice, not anybody else's voice. I need my voice to be heard. And I doubled down on that, you know? I doubled down on listening to myself. I doubled down on putting out my point of view out there into the world. So coming back as Kelleran Beq, it had to be my point of view. It couldn't just be this cool thing I did. I had to imbue it with meaning for me, right? Which is why the Indinkra symbols on the thing, which is why the double lightsabers, the way I did it, you know? Everything that I did from Star Wars 99 on had to be my voice in some kind of a way. And that's what kept me going. That's what keeps me going to this day. Like, as an artist, we get to ask big questions. We don't necessarily have to have the answers, but we have to have the questions. And, you know, a lot of times when we're in things, people go, you're just an actor. And, the ability to be an actor is probably one of the most important skills on this planet, because we have to embody emotion and make you believe it. It's not easy to do. The people who don't do it well, we know, right? We know who they are. The people who do it well, we know who they are too, and that's who we keep coming back for. And what it does is it gets us to ask questions about ourselves. And when we ask questions about ourselves and we have conversations about ourselves, we can collectively have those conversations and move us forward as a human being, right? Human is not just a noun, right? We're not a human-ing, we're human being. and we have to be human. And as artists, we get to ask, what is that? What does that mean to be human, right? And you get to see what it is through the characters that we play. And it influences all of us, right? If we want to be Han Solo, whether or not we end up with a homeboy that's a Wookiee in a Millennium Falcon, there's something about that character that is in us now, that we become, even in our everyday lives. So thinking about that is what keeps me going. And them, young people, you know. I was saying yesterday about teachers, right? And I came very, very late to teaching, and I teach at the university level, but my teachers growing up were my heroes. From my parents, who were my first teachers, to all the teachers that said, you can do it, yeah? To the teacher, I was talking about my English teacher today to a young person out there who was like, go read this Shakespeare in front of the class, right? And I was just like, I don't understand why, but he saw something in me that I didn't see, you know? And when I read that Shakespeare, it was like everything opened up. I understood it, right? And he saw that I could do that, right? Kelleran Beq is, there have been a lot of reluctant teachers in Star Wars. Kelleran Beq is not one of them, right? Obi-Wan was like, okay, maybe I'll teach. Qui-Gon died, okay, I have to, right? Yoda was like, I don't want to teach this cat, he's too old, right? Kelleran Beq is like, give me all the kids. I want to teach them, right? Can I beat everybody in the galaxy? You damn right I can. But that's not where I want to be. I want to be here in this temple teaching these kids. And the reason why Kelleran is so important to me is because I think K through 12 teachers are superheroes. And I want them to see a superhero on screen. I want kids who are looking at Kelleran Beq and going, you know what? I don't just want to be a Jedi, I want to be a teacher. And I want them to want to and love and be passionate about teaching. It's the most important job we have in any society.
Ahmed, thank you very much. That
Thank you.
was very beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us for the Ahmed Best panel. We are about to start the Children of the Watch panel with Mr. Kevin Lyle here in a moment. And as we are on our way out, real quick, Ahmed, would you please select one lucky youngling to win our free prize donated to us by BigBadToyStore.com
Oh, nice.
with
Look at
a
this.
friend of yours on it. You might know one of these guys.
Yeah, I've been trying to get Favreau to do a show with me and Pedro Pascal and call it My Two Dads.
I'd watch it.
Good. And it's just us looking at each other like, oh, Mando, oh, Kelleran. Okay, how am I expected to give it to one? I can't do that. I feel terrible now. Like, oh, there's so many beautiful kids out here.
Okay, how about we ask a trivia question?
Okay.
Okay. What is the
Put that on me.
name of the Gungan city in The Phantom Menace? You had your hand up first? There you go. Come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and, if you're staying for the other panel, stay in your seats. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of the con. And may the force be with all of you, you rebel scum.